Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and here today I have a model showcase video for this 1/35 scale French CHAR 2C Super Heavy Tank. The model that you see here is built for my own personal collection and is not for sale and or purchase. However, like I often mention in these build videos, I often take on commission build projects from vehicles ranging from 1/35 scale all the way up to 1/6 scale. For availability and pricing information, that information would be best by contacting me through the email address listed below, which is info@eastcoastarmory.com. Now, this model is built predominantly out of the box. However, during the model's construction, there were some key points to bring up, which will definitely help anyone who either has one of these kits in their collection and hasn't started it yet, or for anyone who's interested in adding one of these kits to their collection. In this video, I'm going to be going over the subtle nuances with the model's construction, as well as a complete model kit unboxing of this model here. So stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of really cool content coming. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and take a quick walk around this model. I'll start this walk around with this little message. When the tank was first developed or envisioned, it was dreamt to be a land battleship. Of all of the designs that came after that standpoint, the one vehicle that literally probably took that to heart was the CHAR 2C, and that's the vehicle that we have here. The CHAR 2C is a French super heavy tank that was developed after World War I. The vehicle itself had its origins during the latter half of the First World War, but for one reason or another, the vehicle didn't really enter into production until the early 1920s and was fielded in 1921. Total were 10 units that were built of this vehicle type. One quick glimpse of this vehicle and someone can easily see that this tank's design is firmly rooted in World War I. The vehicle utilizes a very large, elongated rhomboidal hull shape that is bristling with side machine guns. However, lifted from the French FT-17, the vehicle does utilize its main armament in a fully revolving turret. Although, unlike most tank designs which utilize only a single turret for its armament, the CHAR 2C utilizes two. The vehicles basically have the visual appearance of a World War I period dreadnought type battleship. They were even fabricated in a shipyard. The only thing missing is some rigging, and this vehicle here really does take the moniker of land battleship. Now, there's not a whole lot of information that is known about the actual specs of this vehicle. However, what is known is that of the 10 production units, each of them weighed in at 76 tons. They also utilized a crew of 12 men. Of course, the majority of the weight comes from the tank's armor protection, which measured at 1.8 inches in thickness at its thickest point. For its main armament, it concealed in a revolving turret a 75mm model of 1897 cannon. The tank also utilized 4 Hotchkiss model of M1914 machine guns, which were mounted in the hull sponsons. One was also located in the center of the front of the vehicle, and a final gun was mounted in a revolving turret on its own, all the way at the tank's rear. Now, automotive-wise, the vehicle was propelled by 2 engines, which had a total output of 250 horsepower. Regrettably, the make and model of the engines is unknown. However, if anyone does know this, feel free to put that in the comments section listed below. The tank is also estimated to have been able to travel at 15 kilometers per hour, which is roughly 9.3 miles an hour. Which for a vehicle of this size and also of this era is actually pretty astounding. After the 10 production units were completed, they were handed over to the French Army, which put them into service. The French utilized the CHAR 2C all throughout the 1920s, as well as the remainder of the interwar period. However, by the 1930s, the French High Command were beginning to realize that the CHAR 2C's design was becoming antiquated. They were aware of the newer tank designs which were coming off of the drawing boards, not only in France, but from the other countries as well. The CHAR 2C, however, was still kept in French service and was primarily used as a propaganda tool, having the stigma of being the world's largest tank, which it was at this period. Fast forward to the onset of World War II, when the French army began its mobilization, they pressed the Char 2C into service as well. Several of the units were divvied up and were given names of regions of France, such as Normandy and Alsace, to name a few. However, the brass were smart enough not to put these tanks in frontline service, as they knew that the new weapons that the Germans developed would easily be able to knock these vehicles out, as they were a lot slower compared to the other, more modern tank designs which were being used by the French. During this time, the Char 2C was again being utilized for more propagandist roles, such as starring in newsreel footage and films, knocking over trees and forts and what have you, rather than actually being used in combat. However, this all changed when in the summer of 1940, 6 operational tanks of the 51st Bataillon des Chars de Combat engaged the Germans near the Mille-Saint-Maur station. During this battle, the Char 2Cs did not fare very well, and all 6 of them were promptly knocked out by the Germans with their anti-tank guns. There are a handful of photographs taken by the Germans of the tanks which were knocked out, as well as a few vehicles which looked to have been captured intact. The Germans did give a quick analysis of the vehicles and basically came to the same conclusion that the French brass did back in the 1930s, which was that the Char 2C, as monstrous and as imposing as it appears, was an obsolete tank design. So much so that the Germans did not repurpose any of these vehicles like they did with the other captured French equipment, such as the B-1 Bis and the Soma. The remainder of the Char 2Cs, which were captured by the Germans, more than likely all met their end with a cutting torch, because none of the Char 2Cs are known to have survived today. Now, one final fact to point out, I did mention before that at one period of time, the Char 2C was considered to be the largest tank in the world, and this was the case for many years. Up until the Moss, and probably even the American T-28, where the weight of the Char 2C was eclipsed. However, in terms of physical dimensions, the Char 2C still holds the record of being the largest operational tank ever made. And here's the model at the start of the project. For the base starter kit, I'll be utilizing this 1/35th scale Char 2C French Super Heavy Tank kit from Meng. Now, when it comes to plastic model kit companies, Meng is a relatively recent addition to the market. Meng really has its beginnings in the early 2010s time period, and since then have released a lot of very nice plastic tank model kits. What's unique about Meng is that they tend to make models off the beaten path and contain subject matters that are basically ignored and bypassed by all the other major contemporary model kit companies. Some of the first releases that Meng created were basically technical vehicles like the Toyota or a Land Cruiser with a Russian anti-aircraft gun on it, of course for conflict-type zone dioramas. But from there, they quickly then expanded the line and started going into very unique kit subjects, such as this model that we have here, which of course is the Char 2C. Now, in addition to Meng creating some very unique subject matters to base their kits on, their quality of kits are also highly regarded as well. The kits' quality are very well engineered, and the detailing on them is current state-of-the-art tooling, which makes these models very detailed out of the box. These Char 2C kits here date back to 2013, and at that period of time, there was a big fervor in the armor modeling community for vehicles that were pre-World War II, and also, of course, during the World War I timeframe. And with the interest of the World War I centennial, this really put for the first time in the 1/35th scale tank market a genuine desire and interest in World War I vehicles. Such vehicles as the Male, the Female, and the Whippet, as well as the A7V Totenkopf, were back in vogue, so to speak, and plastic model companies were producing kits for them. And this was very welcome, because before this little period of time, if you were interested in World War I period vehicles and also interwar period of vehicles, your selections were very laughably sparse. For World War I tanks, you had the limited selection from MHAR, whose tooling is quite primitive compared to the type of tooling that one would expect for today. Not to mention there were the other kits from Toro, the A7V Totenkopf that I recently completed. That kit comes to mind. Outside of those two options, you are basically left to scratch build something or possibly track down an elusive or extremely rare limited edition resin kit, which would of course require a lot of elbow grease and special skill set in order to turn it around into a completed model. However, all of that changed in the 2012 to about the 2015 timeframe. At this point in time, you had these new upstart plastic model companies such as Meng. Takom is another company that comes to mind, and these companies were using state-of-the-art tooling and technology, pumping out kits of very high quality. And not just were they in high quality, but they were in general release mass market plastic kit form, as opposed to a small craft resin type kit, which one would typically expect to find for something as weird and oddballish in vehicle type, like the one we have here. Now, because these kits here are either still in production or are such a recent release, they are very prolific and are very easily come by. This kit here I acquired off of eBay about a year ago, so it hasn't been sitting in the stash for a long period of time. These kits here retail anywhere from about $30 to $60 US. Starting with the model's graphic design, here we have one of the CHAR 2C Super Heavies, most specifically Alsace, driving over some muddy terrain. Now, even though the composition is very simple in its rendering, there's nothing really going on in the background, the quality of the illustration itself is still very nicely done. The artist did a nice job with rendering out all the little details found on this vehicle. Moving to the rest of the graphic design, this is typical here for not only Meng kits, but specifically kits from their World War I series, as we have over here. But I guess since it is a World War I-ish design tank, it kind of makes sense. While on the graphic design, here we have the logo for Meng, which I gotta say has always been funny to me. Specifically, whenever I see the word and I hear people talking about this company, I instantly think of Scarface, because, well,
I told you, man! I told you! Don't f with me!
And now I'm pretty sure you will too. Moving from the logo, now it takes us to some color charts where we have two variants of options that the model can be built. You either build it with the camouflage for Alsace or just basic French olive drab for the other vehicles from the CHAR 2C family. And yet a third variant for this kit to be built as. Opening the box will reveal the kit's contents. And the kit itself, like I said before, is an all-plastic model kit, but does feature several components that are made in photo etch. All the plastic parts are injection molded and are made in this tan type plastic. The plastic itself does have similar attributes to the type of plastic one would find on a Tamiya kit. Here you can see the detailing found on the side panels. Note the louvers as well as a small little riveting. Here we have the upper and the lower hull pan. Suspension-wise, seems to be very similar to the CHAR B1 BIS from Tamiya that I've built recently, with the way the wheels get mounted onto the bottom track rail sponsons. There are some leaf spring detailing molded into these sections here. And the upper hull continues the riveting that is found on the side panels from before. Here we have the sprocket as well as the wheel locks that I was mentioning before. These, of course, are probably the idlers, as well as other bits like the exhaust manifold, hashes, other bits of equipment. You can see the grill work on the top portion that's integrally molded in. Some more turret components. This, of course, are all of the running gear components. Again, very similar in concept to the CHAR B1 BIS. An upper casemate, of course, for the middle section of the vehicle. Note all of the riveting is present. Here we have the turret. And the smaller secondary turret is also found in the bag that we have here. Here we have side sections that encase the wheels. Again, everything looks to be standard type of quality that one would expect on a contemporary model kit. Now, digging down deeper into the box brings us to the photo etch. Now, this, of course, is standard with the kit, so this is one less bit of equipment that the modeler would need to track down separately from an aftermarket source. Quality looks very good, and the meshwork is very fine, so fine that it's pretty difficult to get the camera to zoom in on, which is a good sign for a high-end model kit. There is a clear piece of runner, which, if I know any better, would say it's the headlight or searchlight lens cover. The last plastic bits to talk about are the bag of track links. This vehicle here does feature workable individual track links, which is a nice feature, specifically on these World War I period of vehicles. The one-piece vinyl track probably wouldn't be the best material for one of these vehicles, simply because of the size, length, and just the basic mass that these tracks tend to have. The workable track links do tend to be a lot more favorable, in my opinion, than something single vinyl. However, of course, I will point out that I'll gladly take single vinyl over individual static link and length any day of the week, but that goes without saying. When it comes to the detailing on the workable track links themselves, they look to be very nicely done, and will probably lock into each other without any issues. The plastic does seem to be different compared to the Tamiya B1 BIS, in which that material was a ABS type of plastic. This material here looks to be more of a polystyrene, however, should go together just as easily. But of course, more information on that is to come. Here we have the tank's instruction manual, and Meng really did a good job with the manual. It's not only is it just a instruction booklet, but it also gives you a nice little brief history of the vehicle in Chinese, but I'm pretty sure that they have it in English as well. Very similar to the type of thing you'll find with Tamiya kits. And here we go, straight to the CAD drawings of the build. The instruction quality looks to be very good. It's very similar, again, in quality with both the CAD drawing as well as the way it's laid out. Something that you would see with a Tamiya kit, which, again, needless to say, is pretty good. Now, of course, if there are any hiccups or any type of mistakes, I'll gladly point them out as the video and the build progresses. Here in the back, we have a nice little color chart that has all the different options for the decals that are supplied with the model. And here we have the decal sheet right here. They look to be just your typical Waterslide decals. And from the other Meng kits I've seen and worked on in the past, the quality of the decal should be very good. Starting with the model's running gear and the suspension, the CHAR 2C utilized a similar suspension system to the B1 BIS. This is not just true for the overall design aspect, but also for the way the kit is assembled. The Meng kit has its wheels in a interwoven format. However, the way they assemble and mount onto the bottom portion of the hull over here is very reminiscent to the Tamiya B1 BIS kit. Because of that, anyone who's built the Tamiya can easily level up to the CHAR 2C. From the road wheels now takes us to the model side skirts. Now, just like with the B1 Bis, the Char 2C has an inner side skirt and an outer side skirt which thoroughly envelops the wheels and gives them some adequate protection. Now, this is an option as you can build the model either with or without the side skirts, and unfortunately this is one aspect of the build that kind of bit me. When I was working on the model, originally I had the intention to build this model like the way you see it on the box art with the version with the camouflage pattern. Unfortunately for me, when I was working on the model, I realized that the one with the camouflage pattern did not have the side skirts fitted. Now, of course, I could have built this model and painted it with the camouflage pattern, as I'm pretty sure that vehicle did have the skirts at one period of time, but I really felt that if I was going to do the one with the camo pattern, it really should be with the side skirts left off. Why this was something I ran into was because if you're following the instructions right off the bat want you to glue these components on, and they don't tell you that they're optional or that they should be omitted for the rendition of the, I think the version is Alisace, the one with, again, the camo pattern. Because I had the side skirts on, it kind of pigeonholed me into building the vehicle as Normandy, which is the layout that you see here. Now, I really wanted to bring that up to light because if anybody has this kit and is intending to build it either as the Alsace or the other rendition, which is supplied on the decal sheet for this kit, you need to be proactive on the side skirt portion of the build because you can easily fall into this circumstance that I did where you installed the side skirts permanently and you were basically stuck with the way you see it here. Now, this isn't a ding on the kit itself. The kit is still a great model and I'm still extremely happy in how it turned out. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if I pick up 2 more of these kits to build them as the other 2 renditions, which are supplied on the decal sheet. From the side skirts, this now brings us to the front idler wheels. Now, the Char 2C with this type of a tank design, which is again very similar to what was seen on the Tamiya B1 Bis, the idlers need to be assembled in a subassembly format. Why this is worthy to mention is because with this subassembly format, you need to have the alignment be perfect so that the idlers mate with the inner hull and then they connect to the outer hull in a nice straight manner. If these pieces shift or adjust on you during the setting of the glues, you're going to have a problem with the outer alignment and can throw things off. Now, fortunately, with the type of engineering that I've seen on this kit, the parts are perfect and don't need any hand fitting in order to get everything to fit in just right. Just be careful when you're gluing something in place. Make sure that the glues you're using are setting properly and you shouldn't have any problems with the overall assembly. From the front idler now brings us to the sprocket. Sprockets were assembled out of the box and nothing really much to talk about. However, one thing I do want to mention is that this is one vehicle that I strongly recommend to pre-paint the underhull and the running gear prior to assembly. Now, this is generally a feature that I do on all of my small and large scale builds for that matter, but on the Char 2C, this is definitely something that is noteworthy because once the unit is fully assembled like this, you're not going to have access to get paint into the small nooks and crannies that are found on a vehicle like this. Now, I have seen several YouTube tutorials where individuals build these models and they just build them complete and then paint them once they're fully assembled. However, from my personal experience, this is just going to lead to having areas where paint is missed on the model, and it's one of those things where it looks like it's fully painted, but if you look very carefully, you're going to see parts that are going to be left in bare plastic. It's unavoidable, specifically when you have something with all of these type of niches and other little cavities that the paint is just not going to flow into. From the sprockets, this now brings us to the tank's Caterpillar tracks. Now, just like with many of the other World War I and interwar period of vehicles, the Char 2C utilizes tracks which are similar to like what you would see on an excavator. Now, the tracks on the Meng kit here are made with the workable track link design, which is a very nice feature that this kit does have. The tracks do assemble pretty effortlessly and once completed really look nice on the model. The kit does supply you with an ample amount of links. Like you see here, I have the bag of the leftover units that weren't needed, which is great in case you break 1 or 2 links during the construction, which, by the way, was not an issue I ran into on this build. Now, like I just stated, the tracks are indeed workable, but they do have some reservations to them. Now, to illustrate this, I have two links right over here. If you look at the link, they are pre-drilled out, and the way they assemble is with a click and snap type assembly, which is, again, very effortlessly, and the tracks assemble quickly. However, one small little ding that these tricks have is that if you look at the peg for the end that we have here, it is just slightly too small. With the material that these links are molded in, if you click them in, these little nubs here can wear out fairly quickly, and because of that, the track will not hold onto its mating end in a secure manner. Because of that, the tracks are on the frail side. However, for most static use, this is not going to be a problem. This definitely becomes a problem for anyone who's looking to either motorize or RC convert one of these models, which, by the way, was actually very tempting during this build until I, of course, got to the track. Because of the CHAR 2C's design, with this entire section portion here, you can literally make this whole unit remove, giving you access to the inside for the use of batteries or any type of gearbox maintenance. With the way the sprockets are designed, you can hook up some kind of system where it connects to the internal gearbox, and I have seen several individuals on YouTube pull off full RC 1/35 scale conversions with vehicles that are harder than this one. So this one was definitely very tempting during the onset. However, with the stock tracks, this is not going to be the case. These tracks here are far too frail and are just not designed for the rigors of functional use. Now, I believe there may be a set of metal track links on the market to replace the kit ones. If that's the case, that would probably be a good option to go with, which is basically kind of a shame because the way the sprocket interacts with the cogs found on the inner chain portion of the track links, it really times very, very well. So, unfortunately, if anyone's going to be looking to RC convert one of these, it can be done, but you're going to need to find a solution for the tank stock Caterpillar tracks. But for static display use, which is basically what 99% of the people out there are going to be buying these kits for, the stock track should be more than suffice. From the track, this now takes us to the tank's machine guns. Being a interwar tank design, this vehicle is just bristling with them. We have, in total on the hull, 3 machine guns. One on each side of the sponson, and another one right here in the center. The machine guns are very nicely detailed, and what's nice about them is that they are fully functional in that they have pivoting functions to them. This is true for all of the machine guns on the vehicle, not just the ones found on the hull, but also the one found on the little turret here on the back of the vehicle. From the machine guns now takes to the side hull ventilation system. Now the way the kit is designed is the kit has some very nice molded in grill work on the inner portion, and then it's topped off with these protective photo etch grill covers. On the bottom portions here we have small hinge work to complete the look. The vehicle in this aspect is very nicely engineered and the pieces go on very smoothly. However, one thing to point out is with the hinge work. These pieces are very, very thin and can be very frail. It's going to be important for the builder to keep in mind during the removal aspect from these pieces off of the runner. They can easily be bent and snapped during the removal process. In fact, on one of these units here, the piece was already pre-broken when I started the build. Luckily, I was able to salvage the unit by gluing it back together very carefully and mounting it to the side of the hull without any need of having to scratch build a replacement. But it is something to keep in mind, specifically, again, for someone who's encountering this build for the first time. From the grills brings us to the bow headlight. This again is built out of the box with no mods needed, but I will like to point out that the kit is nicely designed with how the headlight lens is represented. It's made from a single piece of clear plastic which gets mounted to the base, and what's very nice is on the inside portion of the base they even molded in the little light bulb detailing that we have here. It's a very nice touch and I just wanted to point that out. From the hull now brings us to the tank's turrets. Starting with the one in the rear, the CHAR 2C utilized a small miniature turret with a single machine gun, kind of reminiscent of something that you would see like on an FT-17. Just like with the other detailing on the model, it's very nicely done. One thing I do have to point out is on the little machine gun ball. On the model, I was trying to install the unit, and regrettably, the little ball fell out and bounced off to Lost Partia. Because of that, a new ball needed to have been fabricated. The one that you see on this model here is actually turned from a piece of resin on the lathe, and I was able to mimic perfectly the original tooling found on the plastic part. From the rear turret now brings us to the main armament turret in the front. Just like with the one in the rear, all of the detailing is crisply rendered with the riveting as well as some of the panel lines. We have here a little spaced armor section, again, nicely rendered out of the box. Of course, the turret rotates freely, and the gun is fully adjustable. And like all the other components, the whole unit itself is very nicely rendered. From the turrets now brings us to the cupolas. Now, the Char 2C, since it does utilize 2 turrets, the vehicle is equipped with 2 cupolas. What's actually unique about the cupolas is their overall design and shape. They have this slitted mushroom type layout, which is very similar to many of the emplacements found on the Maginot Line, which is not surprising because both of these units were developed at around the same time. Now, I believe these slits are either for ventilation or probably even vision to a certain extent. However, with the way the kit is designed, the cupolas were actually probably the most difficult part on the entire model. With the way these are designed, the unit is a 2-piece assembly. The bottom portion here, where the slits are found, is a separate ring which then connects to the top mushroom section. Because of this assembly, you will have a seam line to contend with. Now, normally seam lines are fairly easy to deal with, but on this unit here, it was very problematic because of the very finely molded in ventilation slits that we have here along the lower portion. It was very, very difficult in trying to get some super glue or even some kind of a putty to get in here to sand away and polish away to the way you see it on the model. The way you see it here was really the best I was able to get without ruining the ventilation slits found on the bottom portion. This is definitely something to keep in mind for anyone who's working on one of these kits, to pay attention to this section here. From the turrets, this now brings us to the middle section of the vehicle, which is undoubtedly used for the tank's engine compartment. Now, because the Char 2C utilized 2 engines, the vehicle utilizes 2 sets of exhaust manifolds, as well as 2 sets of radiators. Just like with the side hull vent system, the radiator detailing is molded in a very similar way. We have some nicely, intricately detailed sections molded into the top plate, and then they are topped off with a nice set of brass photo etch. The exhaust manifolds and on Char 2C are comprised of these 3 units. These 2 are obviously for the main engines, and the third one is either a generator or some other auxiliary type unit. Either way, the exhausts are nicely designed, where if you notice they have their plumbing to them. Now, the pieces do assemble in a 2-piece assembly, which means you will have a seam line to contend with on all 3 of these components. They are easily polished away, but basic modeling experience is going to be needed to deal with that. The exhaust runs into the side over here, and it's topped off with this small little heat shield plate. Again, everything you see here is built out of the box. One thing to point out is on the exhaust manifolds, you can easily make a mistake where you glue 2 of the same components together. This is what happened to me on this build, but luckily I was able to catch it before the glues were able to set and make the corrections. This is something you need to pay attention to on this build if you're working on this kit. Moving from the exhaust manifolds now brings us to the small little tubes that we have here on the top deck. Now, along with the commander cupolas, these sections here are probably some of the most tricky and difficult aspects of this entire build. Just like with the vents on the side with their hinge detailing, these small little tube sections feature a similar type difficulty due to their small, frail nature. These pieces are very, very thin, and because of that, with the injection molded plastic that they are made in, can snap very easily. Now, luckily, I didn't have any problems on this build, and I was able to successfully mount them without any issues. But removing them from the sprue, cleaning them off, and getting them aligned just right is definitely something you're going to need to take your time with, and it is something that once it's done, you're glad it's over. One nice aspect of these pieces is that if you notice, they are nicely shaped, and rendered out of the box. The holes do line up pretty well, and again, the procedure, if you take your time, should go by fairly easily. But patience is going to need to be exhibited by the builder for this aspect of the build. Moving from there now takes us to the paint and the markings. Now, like I said before, when I first started the model, I initially wanted to build it as the Alsace, which is the variant with that really cool camouflage scheme that was found on the box art. However, like I also mentioned, because I accidentally mounted on the side skirts, I had to change my idea, and so I went with the Normandy, which is the version that we have here. For the Normandy, the color palette that I was issued said that the vehicle was in all French olive drab, which is the way you see it in this video. For the markings, these are all the kit's applied units and are comprised of Waterslide decals. They consist of the nameplate found on the side portion here, which by the way is actually mounted onto a piece of photo etch, which gives it a nice little standoff type feature to it. We have the vehicle's name on the front, and the Normandy had this coat of arms here on the turret. Now, regrettably, it's only on one side, which does make for an asymmetrical type appearance on the reverse side of the vehicle. The quality of the Waterslide decals were very good, basically on par with the other contemporary plastic model kits on the market. They were able to be installed, lacquered on, and weathered over without any issues. Now, another really interesting attribute that the Char 2C has is its overall size. The vehicle is gigantic. Now, not so much in width, but definitely in length, it has one of the longest hulls I've ever seen. To put things in perspective, here I have a Tamiya 1/35 scale Char B1 bis. Now, the bis isn't exactly the world's largest tank, but it's also not the smallest. Compared to the Char 2C, it is dwarfed in size. And to further put things in perspective while also keeping a early war French theme, here I have a French Soma and a Hotchkiss that I built many moons ago. And you can see with just these two paired up side by side, they give you the entire length of one Char 2C. And since I have all of my World War II French tanks out, I might as well take the opportunity to get them in a nice family photo. In case anyone is wondering, the Soma and the Hotchkiss models that we have here are built off of the old Heller kits, and I built these models back when I was a teenager in the early 2000s. The Char B1 bises that we have on the table, this version here is the motorized unit, and this one here is the static counterpart. Of course, both are the Tamiya kit. And both of these are on the channel, and that's basically everything to it. The only other thing I can think of is, well, vive la France. In the end, I'm really happy on how this build turned out. In fact, I enjoyed the build, honestly, more than I thought I would. Meng really hit a home run on this model's engineering, both with the detailing aspect, the model is just exquisitely detailed and rendered, but also the engineering on how the kit assembles. The kit assembles in a very fast and simplistic way, and in not a whole lot of time, you will have the entire model basically ready to go. The subject matter alone is also very interesting. Now, I was never really a fan or a huge connoisseur of the pre-war type tank designs, but I gotta say that after building this one, it's definitely a field I could see myself having more of an interest in. If Meng were to come out with something like a TOG 2 or even the American Liberty heavy tank, this is definitely something that I could see myself getting in line for, specifically if it has the same type of engineering that this kit has here. From there now brings us to skill level and recommendation. Now, starting with the skill level aspect, although I found this kit to be very easy and enjoyable to build, I cannot recommend it to a beginner. The reason why I say this is because of the tank's small, very frail components. Such components, like I mentioned before, being the small little tubes which emerge from the fuel tanks on either side, along with the other smaller fittings, say on the grill work, on the sides, and this also ties in with the photo etch. In addition to that, the way the model assembles, where it's basically a lot of flat plates that need to puzzle fit together, so to speak, something like this will give a beginner a hard time, and is definitely something to avoid. This kit here would be best handle for someone who has had a few kits under their belt and wants to level up to something else. For instance, a person who's built the Tamiya B1 bis, this guy over here would definitely be the next logical step to build after that model. So for this kit here, again, this is going to fall within an intermediate to an advanced range person who could tackle one of these builds. From there now brings us to recommendations. Now this is where this kit really becomes interesting because there's a lot of small little niche subsets that this tank here would definitely fit into. Of course, the most obvious is anyone who's a fan of French World War II armor. Anyone who's built the Tamiya B1 bis, or even the other 1/35 scale French tank kits on the market, be it the Hotchkiss to the Soma, or even the Renault. Anyone who has those tanks will definitely need the Char 2C in order to round off their collection. Another type of individual who would appreciate this kit would be anybody who likes to focus their model building aspect on the Blitz period of the war. Because this vehicle, along with the other sister vehicles of the Char 2C family, did see action during this campaign. And sidestepping from the Blitz type builder, because this is an interwar tank design, this is another field that someone would have some interest in. Keep in mind some other vehicles that are in plastic on the market right now that are in the same type of realm as this guy here would be the Dragon M6 and M6A1 heavy tank, the amusing hobby German Neubafahrzeug heavy tank, along with several renditions of the Russian T-28. Oddly enough, while on the topic of the T-28, because the Char 2C is a super heavy tank, this is yet another collection that this model does fit in. If anybody has the Dragon American T-28 super heavy tank, also known as the T-95 gun motor carriage, that lots of people don't seem to realize is the same vehicle, regardless on whatever you want to call it, this model here would make a good companion for it. Other vehicles in the same range would of course be the British Tortoise, the German Moss, and E100. And yet another person who would enjoy this kit would be anybody who's a fan of World War I armor. Now of course the Char 2C did not see service during World War I, however the design itself is basically a World War I tank design in many ways. This vehicle here would definitely be a good companion to anybody who's a fan of the male, the female, the Whippet, and even, yes, the A7V Totenkopf. This vehicle here would fit right on the shelf with one of those without any problems at all. And with that, that wraps up this model showcase video for this 1/35 scale French Char 2C Super Heavy Tank. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel where you can get updates on new model showcase videos like this guy here, or project update videos on ongoing builds when they get posted. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have more pictures of this particular build as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that have been posted on the channel in the past. Finally, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks for watching.